Toto Wolff just said the quiet part out loud. Mercedes may have lost Barcelona because they refused to give a team order. And that one sentence may have destroyed the Russell and Antonelli partnership before the championship even reached its most dangerous phase. Because this was supposed to be Mercedes' dream lineup. Russell, the experienced leader. Antonelli, the teenage superstar with 5 straight wins and the championship lead. 2 Mercedes drivers, both fast enough to fight for the title, both trusted to race freely. But Canada exposed the first crack. Russell pushed Antonelli wide at turn 1. Antonelli called it very naughty over the radio. Wolff cut him off and told him to stop moaning. Then Barcelona turned the crack into a crisis. Hamilton won for Ferrari by 19.5 seconds, while Mercedes was left asking whether its own drivers had cost the team victory. Now the free-to-race era is collapsing. Russell wants his chance. Antonelli wants respect as the points leader. Hamilton wants them fighting each other for just long enough to steal the championship. And Mercedes has one brutal choice ahead. Pick a number 1 driver, or watch Ferrari punish the chaos. Subscribe to the channel. To understand why Wolff's statement was so damaging, you have to go back to the promise Mercedes made at the start of the season. Freedom. That was the word behind everything. Russell and Antonelli were not supposed to be controlled. They were supposed to race. They were supposed to push each other, sharpen each other, and prove that Mercedes had built a driver pairing strong enough to dominate the new era of Formula One without needing politics to decide the order. At first, that sounded powerful. After Australia, it sounded almost perfect. Mercedes opened the season with a 1-2 finish. Russell won. Antonelli finished second. The W17 looked fast, balanced, and dangerous. The team looked calm. Wolff sounded confident. And the message to the world was simple. Both drivers were off the leash. That phrase mattered because it told everyone that Mercedes believed it had enough control to allow risk. It was not acting like a frightened team. It was acting like a team with margin. A team that could let its drivers fight because the car was strong enough, the organization was stable enough, and the championship picture was still wide open. But that kind of freedom only works while it is cheap. The moment freedom starts costing points, positions, or victories, it becomes something else. It becomes a liability. That is what Mercedes did not want to admit too early. Because admitting it would mean admitting the partnership was not as simple as it looked. Russell was not just a senior driver guiding a young teammate. Antonelli was not just the future learning from the present. They were both championship threats, both ambitious, both convinced they had the right to win. And once 2 drivers believe the same car can make them world champion, the garage changes. Every briefing becomes more sensitive. Every strategy call carries more weight. Every radio message starts to sound like evidence. That was the danger hiding underneath the perfect start. Russell had waited years for this kind of chance. He had joined the Mercedes system long before this season, carried expectation through difficult periods, and entered 2026 knowing that Hamilton was gone, the seat was his to define, and the team needed a leader. He was not going to accept becoming a supporting character. Antonelli, meanwhile, arrived with a different kind of pressure. He was the young star Mercedes had invested in, protected, and promoted. He had the speed. He had the fearless reputation. And once the wins started coming, he no longer looked like a project. He looked like the main threat. That is where the partnership became unstable. Because Russell needed to prove the team still belonged to him. Antonelli needed to prove it already belonged to the future. Both positions made sense. That is what made the conflict so dangerous. This was not one driver being unreasonable and the other being calm. This was 2 drivers with real arguments. Russell had experience, loyalty, and the opening win of the season. Antonelli had momentum, victories, and the championship lead. Wolff had to manage both without making either feel betrayed. For a few races, the results helped him. Winning hides tension better than anything else in Formula One. When the trophies arrive, teams can smile through problems. They can call rivalry healthy. They can say competition pushes everyone forward. They can pretend sharp elbows are just part of elite performance. But Canada changed the tone. At turn 1, Russell forced Antonelli wide, and the whole world heard the response. Antonelli did not quietly accept it. He went straight to the radio. He wanted action. He wanted fairness. He wanted the team and the stewards to recognize that his own teammate had crossed a line. That moment was bigger than the move itself. Because it showed that Antonelli was not going to behave like the younger driver who simply accepts his place. He was leading the championship. He had the results. He believed he deserved space, respect, and equal treatment. And then Wolff stepped in. He told Antonelli to concentrate on the driving, not on radio moaning. That message may have been intended to calm the situation. It may have been meant to protect the team from public escalation. But to the outside world, it sounded harsh. To Antonelli's supporters, it sounded like the young leader was being silenced after being pushed wide by his teammate. That is how doubt enters a garage. Not through one sentence alone. Through what the sentence suggests. Was Mercedes protecting Russell? Was Antonelli being told to accept more than he should? Was Wolff trying to control a driver who had already earned the right to speak? These questions did not need clear answers to become dangerous. In Formula One, perception can be enough. If fans start asking, drivers hear it. If media start asking, teams feel it. If the driver himself starts wondering, the relationship changes. Russell won the sprint. Antonelli finished third. On paper, Mercedes survived. But internally, the free-to-race policy had taken its first real hit. Then the Canadian Grand Prix made the imbalance feel even sharper. Antonelli won again, taking his fourth successive Grand Prix victory. Russell retired after an incident-related problem, furious at the side of the track while his teammate strengthened his championship lead. That is a brutal emotional swing. One side of the garage celebrates. The other side calculates what has been lost. Antonelli left Canada with even more authority. Russell left with more pressure. And Wolff left with a problem that could no longer be dismissed as healthy competition. Because the gap was growing. And when the gap grows between teammates, freedom becomes political. If the trailing driver attacks, is he fighting for his title chance, or damaging the team? If the leading driver demands priority, is he being selfish, or simply protecting the championship? If the team stays neutral, is it being fair, or being weak? That is the trap Mercedes was walking into. And the most dangerous part was that Hamilton was getting closer. That changed everything. If Mercedes had a massive advantage over Ferrari, Wolff could afford internal tension. He could let Russell and Antonelli fight, collect the points, and deal with the emotional damage later. But Hamilton's rise made every internal battle more expensive. Because Hamilton does not need Mercedes to collapse. He only needs them to waste enough. A defensive move here. A delayed strategy call there. A teammate battle that costs tire life. A refusal to swap positions because nobody wants to upset the garage. That is how a Ferrari win becomes possible. Barcelona proved it. And that is why Wolff's statement landed like a hammer. When he admitted Mercedes may have lost because they avoided team orders, he was not just commenting on one strategy mistake. He was admitting that the philosophy itself had failed under pressure. The freedom that once made Mercedes look fearless had become the reason Hamilton could strike. That is a devastating reversal. Because now Russell and Antonelli know the rules are changing. They may still smile in interviews. They may still speak about teamwork. They may still say the right things about respect and shared goals. But inside, both drivers understand that the partnership is entering a new phase. The team is watching them differently now. Every fight will be judged not only by fairness, but by cost. Every overtake attempt will be measured against Hamilton's threat. Every radio complaint will carry the memory of Canada. Every strategic choice will raise the same question. Is Mercedes racing for both drivers, or preparing to choose one? That is why the trouble ahead feels so big. Because once a team starts moving toward control, the drivers start looking for signs of favoritism. And when both drivers believe they deserve the team's trust, even a normal decision can feel personal. A pit stop 1 lap later. A strategy call 1 lap earlier. A request to hold position. A warning about tire management. A radio message telling one driver to be careful around the other. These are routine things in most teams. But in a title fight, they become loaded. Russell will hear every instruction through the filter of a driver trying to prove he is not being pushed aside. Antonelli will hear every instruction through the filter of a championship leader trying to prove he should not be restrained. And Wolff has to speak to both while knowing Hamilton is waiting for any hesitation. That is the real crisis. Mercedes did not just create 2 fast drivers. It created 2 drivers with enough evidence to believe they should be prioritized. Russell can say he has the experience, the loyalty, the maturity, and the right to fight back. Antonelli can say he has the points, the victories, the momentum, and the right to be protected. Both arguments are strong. And when both arguments are strong, the team principle loses the luxury of easy decisions. That is why the early promise of freedom now looks almost naive. Not because freedom is wrong. Because freedom without a clear emergency plan becomes dangerous when the championship tightens. Mercedes allowed the rivalry to grow under the cover of success. But once Hamilton won, the cost became visible. The team could no longer pretend that Russell versus Antonelli was only making Mercedes stronger. It was giving Ferrari a way in. And for a team with championship ambitions, that is the line Wolff cannot allow them to cross again. The next layer is where the partnership stops looking tense and starts looking dangerous. Because Canada exposed the emotion. Barcelona exposed the cost. And those are not the same thing. Emotion can be managed. A team can close the briefing room door, replay the incident, let both drivers speak, set a boundary, and move on. It may be uncomfortable, but it is part of racing. Every great team with two fast drivers has to survive anger at some point. But cost is different. Cost forces action. When Wolff said Mercedes may have lost Barcelona because they did not want to issue a team order, he was admitting that the problem was no longer just about feelings. It had moved into the results. It had touched the win column. It had given Hamilton and Ferrari a chance they should not have been allowed to take. That is the moment a team principle can no longer hide behind philosophy. Before Barcelona, free-to-race was an identity. After Barcelona, free-to-race became a risk assessment. And once a team starts calculating the cost of freedom, freedom is already dying. That is why Russell and Antonelli are in such a dangerous place now. Because from this point forward, every battle between them will be judged differently. The question will not simply be, was the move fair? The question will be, did that fight help Mercedes, or did it help Hamilton? That is a brutal standard. Because drivers do not think like accountants at 200 miles per hour. They think in gaps, instinct, pride, and opportunity. If Russell sees a chance to pass Antonelli, he is not thinking about public relations. He is thinking about proving he is still a title contender. If Antonelli sees Russell defending too hard, he is not thinking about the constructors' table first. He is thinking about why the driver behind him in points is risking his race. That is where teammate rivalries become poisonous. Both drivers can be right from their own side of the garage, and the team can still lose. Mercedes now has to deal with a problem that every dominant team fears. Their two drivers are not fighting for scraps. They are fighting for the same crown. Antonelli is not a rookie quietly learning. Russell is not a veteran accepting the background role. Both have reasons to believe the team should trust them. Antonelli has the results. He has the wins, the momentum, and the championship lead. After Monaco, he looked like the driver who had seized the season by the throat. 5 consecutive victories does not happen by accident. It changes how a garage sees you. It changes how rivals talk about you. It changes how your teammate sleeps at night. Russell has his own case. He won the season opener. He has the deeper Mercedes history. He has spent years inside the organization, waiting for a chance to lead it without Hamilton standing above the entire project. He is not going to look at a teenage teammate and simply accept that the future has arrived before he has had his own proper era. That is the collision. Antonelli is saying, I am already here. Russell is saying, I was never gone. And Wolff has to decide how long Mercedes can allow both messages to exist at full volume. This is where Hamilton becomes the most dangerous figure in the story, even when he is not inside the Mercedes garage. Because Hamilton's Ferrari win turned the internal rivalry into a championship liability. Before that, Russell and Antonelli fighting could be sold as strength. It pushed both drivers. It made Mercedes look fearless. It gave fans drama while the team kept collecting points. But Hamilton changed the meaning of their fight. Now, when Russell and Antonelli battle, it does not just entertain the audience. It risks giving Ferrari strategy windows. It risks damaging tires. It risks slowing the Mercedes pair at exactly the moment Hamilton needs them to lose time. It risks forcing Wolff into decisions that make one driver feel sacrificed. That is why Barcelona was so damaging. Ferrari used strategy beautifully. Hamilton converted pole into victory. The virtual safety car arrived at the perfect time. Mercedes was left with the painful feeling that the race had slipped away while its own driver management question remained unresolved.